we're hoping that the not that this is about any monetization or anything. We're just having a ton of fun with this, so this is really cool.
Yeah,
we've been doing this for like almost a year now, and it's just been great. So we're into season 2, and it's a lot of fun. So we like doing it, so which is really cool. And then we get to meet people like you. All right, fine.
Intro
right.
away.
Intro away. Everybody, thank you once again, Ren Estate Rocks. Here we are for another amazing episode, season 2. Fantastic. I think, what are we on? Episode 462 of season 2 or
whatever.
7, whatever we are. As always, find us at Ren Estate Rocks. We're here on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your streaming services. Shoot us an email, renestaterocks@gmail.com. We always love your questions and reading them on air. And we're going to do another Q&A episode as well this season as well. And it's a great one. People had a lot of time. However, today we have another special guest. Somebody who we swear we have never met before. He is licensed cab driver since 2008. I know that sounds boring. Just wait, there is more. He's got a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Criminology. Boring. I know. We're going to get there. Stop.
That's not boring.
It's not boring.
Talking about?
He and his wife do incredible work fostering babies in the Children's Aid Society. He's an incredulous multitasker, being a professional keynote speaker, corporate event promoter, comedian, cashcab crooner, anything else that starts or sounds like the letter C. As exhausting as all that sounds, there's more. He juggles 3 kids. He's mastered the art of faxing people from an IBM desktop while driving, now driving far and wide through the traffic of Wi-Fi and the internet. Please welcome to the show the man with the most expensive ride in all of TV game show hosts, the Canadian cash cab crooner himself, Mr. Adam Growe.
Yes. 95% of that was boring until you got to that last part. That's what you're saying?
Well, with that intro.
I know. Here's what he's all about. I know, boring.
Yeah.
Nothing. Criminology does not sound boring in the least.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah. I mean, it's all part of the holistic approach to the cash cab. And you're allowed to identify the fact that you have a familiarity with cash cab. I mean, that's okay.
Well, we did sign an NDA.
We've been fans for years. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it's okay to say we met on set randomly, and that's the truth.
On set. Yeah. Well, I mean, because technically the set is a street.
The cab,
and
if you are opting for the visually assisted version of this podcast, you'll see I've put the lights up. I'm not saying you have to, but you can just visualize. And so I'm always happy to talk about cash cab in whatever capacity. You're on season 2. I can only hope for you that you also get to a reboot someday, because we had 8 seasons, which are always available in plentiful amounts on repeats. And then we've just finished the new season after 10 years being out of production, which is going to start to air in January 2024, depending on when you're listening to this. It might be 2032 and you might, we missed it. But you've got it. It's there. A brand new season. I'm calling it season 9.
Okay. So when does it air though?
It starts to air in January 2024.
Okay. All right.
And it'll be in Canada on Game TV and in the States on a channel called Access, which is AXS. And unfortunately, neither of those are currently available from a streaming perspective, but very accessible in your cable package to make sure that you've got those. And of course, the repeats. And they've bought a whole bunch of old Canadian versions. And what I'm not on my soapbox about cash cab. I know there's an agenda that you have for this episode. But for me, when we got renewed, I was really worried that they would try to package it as something other than Cash Cab Canada, but they're not. They're promoting it. No, this is the Canadian host. He's a comedian from Canada. Here's a bunch of old seasons of Cash Cab Canada.
And we're making
a new. Yeah, exactly. I love it.
That's great.
Yeah, the one thing about this new season coming up is that this is cash cab music.
Is that allowed to be discussed?
Right up your alley. This is perfect for you. Yeah. This was a really interesting twist that got us the purchase and the renewal, because Access in particular is very focused on music. For their audience. Game TV is like, whatever, I don't care. It's a game show. We'll air it. It's music, could be sports. Yeah, I love it. And, they've been very supportive as well. But to have the fun opportunity to explore what that means for our audience and where it could lead. We might do another season of music if we get renewed, or we might do movies. Now it's wide open.
Now it's
And
wide open.
There you go.
there
That's
was
very
really
cool.
there was really no worry in my mind about how Canadians in the cab were going to respond to it when we surprised them with an opportunity to be in the cab and then said it's all music trivia. Everybody's like, I don't care. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Ask me anything. I want to win a couple $100. Take me for a ride. So it does, people were, and then of course there are some twists, and the big twists are, instead of a video bonus question to double your money, if you make it to your destination, you can opt to double your money with cashcab karaoke, which means people are singing, some of them as horribly as I sang, and some of them spectacularly. And either way, it's such a great way to end the show and each game within the show. So it's been a lot of fun.
So percentage wise, how many of these people are actually good singers?
Well,
I'm thinking 10% at best.
I think it's low also because you surprise people in the cab with their friends. And so it's not like they're traveling with a group of artists or people that they would even normally even go to a karaoke bar with. Right. So you have to sing as a group to prove to me when I ask a question that you know the song I'm talking about. And so when all of them have to sing together, it's, as you can imagine, just like a normal karaoke bar, the lousy scream singers tend to drown out the people who are there for the artistic expression. So, but it's still fun. And it's only 10 seconds of a song. So it's really not painful to watch. It's joy. It's pure fun.
I don't know. Some people do like a train wreck. So
yeah, true. Well, that's a good segue, and I'm sure this has happened to you before. But if it's okay with you, we would like to turn the tables and ask you some trivia. And
I always give some context to that. How much money do the two of you have for me right now? If you're going to ask me questions, how much is it worth?
My mortgage just doubled, so I've got nothing.
Okay.
In the past, different story, but these are meatballs right down the middle of the plate. Don't worry.
Yeah, we're gonna throw it. So
we think.
So with you in the background of the cash cab. So for all those watching on the YouTube universe, we've put Adam Growe in the seat of where normally he puts other people in the seat, and now we get to be the drivers. So we've got some great questions. There's a little bit of CanCon that's in here.
All right.
And what we've done.
There's a theme.
There's a bit.
Discuss the theme.
The theme is game show hosts.
There you go.
So let's see how well the game show host knows game show hosts. No, Adam has no idea what we're going to ask him. He knew that we were going to maybe do some trivia, but no, he's got no idea. So we're going to make these. We're going to go probably more in the harder to easier kind of area. So
we're going to start the harder ones. Okay,
we're going to start at the $100 question, right? So are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready to play the rent estate remuneration? That's cash cab.
I love it.
It's a working title. It's a working title. It's okay. Number one, Mr. Adam Growe. Who was, and some people say the second most popular host of Family Feud. Who was the actual second host of Family Feud?
The actual second host?
The second host
after Richard Dawson.
After Richard Dawson.
I was gonna say Richard Dawson.
Yeah. It's a $100 question. After
Richard, not Steve Harvey.
Definitely not Steve Harvey. I think he's like the fifth host.
And there was a bit of a hiatus from Richard Dawson to the second host.
Mm-hmm. So even Family Feud got a reboot at some point in time.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know.
Ray Combs.
Oh,
right.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
You remember him?
Because both of them ended up having very similar controversies in terms of, Richard Dawson was kind of after the fact. And I'm not slagging game show hosts because I love game show hosts, right? I'm sure someone, would say, that Adam Growe is like, bringing up the controversies. And then, I just remember, and part of the context that I have to give you is that even though I loved Family Feud and I did grow up with Dawson as the host of Family Feud and kind of revisited more contemporary, when I was a kid watching television, I loved game shows. So that's a context for why I should know all this information. But I also thought that, for instance, Bob Barker and Johnny Carson pretty much did the same thing. When I was a kid, 6 to 9 years old, I thought that's what a game show host is.
That's what
of course,
they do.
knowing as a comedian, it's very different in terms of late night.
Yeah.
But I didn't absorb, the intricacy. I was more experiential. But now that you say Ray, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, unfortunately, he didn't make it onto Running Man either, but but he was still pretty prolific.
That's true. He was good. He was actually
Richard
good.
Dawson's best role.
Yeah.
No
didn't
doubt.
didn't Schwarzenegger explode him in like the most horrible? I can't remember how Dawson. And spoiler alert, I don't think he makes it on Running Man.
No.
If you haven't
He
seen
did
the
not.
movie, coming to a theater near you 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
I'm strike number one already. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Well,
That's fine.
Well, we only have 6, and I think you'll get some of
You
these.
got 5 more to go. Yeah.
So you'll remember the show. So who hosted the cult hit Bumper Stumpers?
Told you we're doing the hard ones first.
I just watched that. I've got a really funny story to tell you about that. I don't know his name.
I think
he
was the only host, right?
Al Dubois.
I would never have known that. I would never have known that in a million years. I barely watched that when that was on the air.
Yeah.
But can I interrupt the flow of this
Please.
quiz? Because I'm on strike number. I'm going to be striking out clearly.
Oh, I don't know.
Because you've got 6 more. Well, you said that already. You said we're going to start with anyway.
Yeah.
My story about that is I grew up in Vancouver, went to University of Toronto. And in my second year, there was a first-year student there that eventually admitted to all we were living in residence. It was basically like a frat. So he eventually admitted to all of us in our residence at New College, University of Toronto, that he was embarrassed to have been a contestant on Bumper Stumpers. And he won on Bumper Stumpers, but he was embarrassed. So jump cut, to use a TV term, which, not to age myself, but that was 30 plus years ago that I met this guy who was embarrassed for being a contestant on Bumper Stumpers. Just last week, I made sure that my cable could get Game TV because I figured, look, I have to be able to say, if I'm asking people to subscribe to Game TV to watch Cashcab music, I better have it. So I made sure I have it. So I get into my package with my cable provider. I go to Game TV. The first thing I see is his episode of Bumper Stumpers.
Wow.
I've never watched Bumper Stumpers in 30. I've never watched it. And I probably saw it in passing when I was a kid or as a teenager. And boom, there he is. So I tried to connect with him on LinkedIn and he hasn't responded. Maybe he's still embarrassed. I didn't send him a message as to why I was reaching out to him, but I haven't talked to him in 3 decades.
Do you want to? Hey, listen, you would give him a shout out here.
I'm not gonna out him. I'm careful and respectful that if he does not want to be doxxed because he's a Bumper Stumper contestant.
All 17 people of our audience will hear it.
Well, and okay. Another sidebar before I strike out for your trivia. This is one of the things that cracks me up. Well, as you can see, I'm not an encyclopedic knowledge person of game show hosts, even in Canada. But on Bumper Stumpers, I think he and his partner won $10,000 plus.
That's an obscene amount of money in the 80s.
Thousands of dollars. Anyway, you always used to joke as a kid when people would win. Oh, they were on a Canadian game show and they won $10,000 or whatever. Yeah. On Cashcab, as you will know when you watch in January, and as you've known if you watch repeat seasons, people are right along. Sometimes they win as a group $600. Right. Split between 4 people.
Yeah.
And it's thrilled. It's like they won $1 million. And I thought the other shoe is eventually going to drop. And it doesn't matter. People love the random experience of being in there and winning whatever amount. Just the bragging rights, I guess. I don't know. It's classic to me.
Well, I think that's a good point. There's something about being in that cash cab, being in that intimate environment, and the energy that you get from being in such a small space while participating in something like that is so much better than the money anyway. right?
Yeah.
You know, when you see
Yeah.
the largest shows, like what's the big one right now? Snake Oil is probably like the biggest prime time, you know, one in the States right now. Somebody just won like $180,000, like, or something like that. And it's like not bad for 43 minutes of work, right? So, but you, there's something about being in that cab. And with the lights and with the Canadiana and with the homage, we seem to feel that like a little bit more. And that's the best part about being on that game show. It's got nothing to do with the money. The money's irrelevant, right? So
Yeah. The energy, the fun. I love that.
yeah, that's great. It's amazing. Okay, number 3.
Okay.
Okay, you're gonna get this one. You're gonna get this one. Who is the longest running TV game show host while hosting the same show?
Of a single show.
The single show, the longest running host of a single show in continuum.
Game show, proper game show, traditional.
Proper game show. Proper game show. Yeah. These are all game show questions.
It's got to be Pat Sajak.
Pat Sajak! Woohoo!
You're still good to go.
There you go.
Good to go.
There
Nice.
you go. Yeah.
He had just beat out Bob Barker, but of course Bob Barker previously had done Truth or Consequence, right? So if you combine the two, I guess he'd been around the longest. But Pat Sajak's retiring. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but he's had a slow burn retirement, and I like that. I like the transition has been, you know, not like a shock to his family. I hope Van gets the
who knows where it'll go. You ready for some more Canadian content?
Okay. You gotta amp it up. Yeah. Remuneration renovation is, you know, whatever the name of the show is. He's sitting on 2 strikes. Was that a $50 question? Because that was a little easier.
That was a $50 question. Yeah.
$50 in the bank with 3 more questions. I don't know how many more. 3 more questions to go.
2 strikes on the board.
Yeah, 2 strikes on the board, and this one's going to be worth $50. Do I get any shout outs, by the way? Like,
you get
fair. No, you're on your own.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We couldn't afford to.
Although you're sitting at a computer, so.
Yeah. No, I'm not Googling. I'm making sure my stuff is off.
Okay. All good. Well, this is $100 question because I think this is more. You'll remember the show and you'll remember one host, but will you remember the second?
Okay.
So Fergie Oliver was the host of Just Like Mom. Who was his co-host? And I'll give you a hint. It was his wife.
Oh, well, I do know this one because I've worked with Catherine.
There you go.
Got
it.
she is absolutely a stellar TV person in all respects, not only on camera. I've been on camera with her. I've worked behind the scenes with Catherine. She's more into directing and producing behind the scenes. And she's just like, you know, like they say this about Canadian comedians and actors a lot. Oh, they should be famous. It's just Canadian star system. She should be, you know, making big bucks, you know, in the States or in Canada. I mean, she does do well in Canada, but she's like top notch. So I did know that one. And and I know her, one of her daughters as well. And, you know, I'm familiar with her time, and it was a challenging time on that show as well. So I know some of that history, but I also know that she's very proud to be part of the Canadian landscape as a part of something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was legendary.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great.
So I changed my mind. That's a $50 question then.
Okay, so we're back to $50. So $100 in the bank. Catherine Swing is the full answer for that one. 2 strikes on the board. Remuneration, rent estate. That's cash.
Rent estate, right?
Yeah, rent estate rocks. Yeah, that's the podcast you're on. It's called Rent Estate. Just
got it.
Know, yeah,
got it.
You know, just in case. Yeah, it's fine. Number 5.
Estate.
Okay, this is my favorite question. Saturday Night Live did a spoof of Jeopardy with Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek. It's a very famous one. The idea was famously borrowed from which comedy skit show?
That's SCTV, Eugene Levy.
And an extra $50 bonus for what was the name of the skit that they did?
On SCTV. It was a hybrid Jeopardy reach for the top type of thing.
Yes.
And frankly, I mean, both of them were comedy gold, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
And because I haven't revisited that, I don't have it. I don't have
Well,
the
you've
bonus.
got. I mean, we're going to give you the right answer because you didn't know it came from SCTV. So this was just a bonus on top of that. So it doesn't detract. It was called half-wits.
Half.
Yes. So you're going to stay in the game.
Maybe my PC, voice was just blocking that out, right?
It could be,
so
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Wits, very
Wits.
dirty word.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got your 50.
I think number 6 is the last question. I think this should be the double or nothing. What do you think, Sheldon?
I think this is double or nothing. You got $150 right now. You got 2 strikes on the board. Last question you got correct. You're on a roll. Question number 6. Last question of the day. Here we are, your destination. Sorry, I can't say that. That's your thing. Here we are in remuneration.
By the way, you're going to be paid. If you do win, you're being paid in prop cash.
Yeah, it's prop cash. Yes, totally prop cash.
Copy that. Good call.
Okay,
good call.
Yeah. Would you like to double or nothing?
I would absolutely be. People would never forgive me if I didn't go for it. If I walked away with $150 in prop cash right now, forget it.
No good.
It cost us $3.20 for that prop cash, though. I mean, that wasn't cheap stuff.
Cost of doing business.
It is. It totally is.
Let's do it.
Okay,
put it in the Reno State budget. Write it off.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you hear us, 17 subscribers? Follow our Patreon for $2 a month. You can play Cashcab. Okay. You ready?
Double or nothing question. You ready?
Here we go.
So in 2010, 2011, and 2013, this game show won Emmys for the best game show, beating out Alex Trebek and Pat Sajak. The show and the host were nominated for a total of 7 times as well. What was the show and who was the host?
Well, this is no longer CanCon. What show beat out in 2010, 11, and 13?
And 13. Yep.
So read the question again. This is double or nothing. I have to hear it again.
So the show won the Emmy for the best game show, beating out Alex Trebek and Pat Sajak. The show and the host were nominated a total of 7 times as well. What was the show? Let's start with what was the show?
This is proper game show. Traditional game show.
Proper game show.
I think so.
If you get the show, you will absolutely get the host.
I'm going to say Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
I'm not going to accept that question and give you the strike. I'm going to give you a hint.
Okay.
There is a Canadian version of this show.
Proper?
That you're probably pretty familiar with.
You mean it was Ben beat out for Cashcab 3 years in a row? I know he won an Emmy as the host, but the show won?
It
Cashcab
won.
USA?
He won. He won for 3. Yep.
Wow. I knew I was up against it when we got the call because he had already won an Emmy when I was auditioning for Cashcab Canada. I didn't know the show won. That is so cool. I tried to distance myself intentionally because I didn't want to try to be like any other version of Cashcab. So I got a trickle of information, watched a couple of DVDs. Remember those? There was like some DVDs where they sent out the episode.
I'm sorry. How do you spell that?
Yeah, or I think it might have been CD-ROMs. It was very cumbersome to watch a show that I was auditioning for. And I just wanted to see what's the gist of it. What is this trivia show on a cab? And they said, and no pressure. My manager said, no pressure. You're auditioning for a role that the host in America has won an Emmy. I'm like, oh, thanks for the pep talk. Yeah. But then I stopped following. I should have known that. I do keep track of what Ben's up to. And I've never met him. He's a very funny comedian and a great host. But I did not realize that the show proper had won. That's so awesome.
So the question was designed about who actually won the Emmy, and it is Ben Bailey for Cashcab. We'll get back into looking if the show itself won the Emmy.
Okay.
I don't want to give false information there. And
you might be right. I didn't take a deep dive. I know he won as the host.
That's great. So here we are, $300 in total. Great job. No, wait. 500 because you doubled. You got 50 and 50. So that was $100 total. Congratulations, you did.
Yeah, that was a particularly poor performance for a game show host on the theme of game shows. to barely scrape by with a hint. I love it.
Well,
it's very generous.
It's better. It's better than having four guys in your cash cab that know everything, almost everything there is about music, to only get the first four questions correct and the last two wrong.
It happens.
Yeah, that's a teaser if I ever heard one.
Yeah, I not that. So I want to go back to just in the intro that we did. Your wife and yourself foster babies to the Children's Aid Society. And what was that decision kind of process like? And like, was that influenced by anything?
Well, it was influenced by our desire to find something meaningful to do as a family for our community and exploring a lot of different things. And the topic had been brought up between myself and my wife when our kids were really young, and it didn't really cement as an opportunity until our kids were old enough to participate in the conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's been over 10 years. And so our eldest was a teenager, and then our youngest was prepubescent at the time, probably 8 or 9. And so they were all at an age where, it's a lot to put on kids, teens, and puberty teen kids. It's a lot to put on kids at all to talk about something like this, but we certainly wanted to do something meaningful as a family. And before we introduce something as big of a commitment as fostering in our own home, we didn't consciously know this, but we knew that at the time when we could talk about it with them, that was the right time to do it. Whereas previous years it wasn't ready. Yeah. So we had talked about different things, and my personal comfort zone, I hear a lot of stories about people doing amazing things overseas in third world countries and war-torn situations as families, even, or in couples. And those things had come up too, and that's just not in my comfort zone. And I hold those people in high regard. I also know people who volunteer weekly at food banks and are committed, and they've been doing it for a quarter of a century. And I also think that's the magnitude of that is also monumental. So I think it's about finding something that is right for you. And our experience with kids, not just our own, but my wife transitioned into a career after our firstborn. She became a doula and a prenatal teacher. So it was really in our world, babies.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't like all of a sudden, it made sense in a lot of different ways. And so when it came up as a serious conversation, again, when our kids were old enough to talk about it, we made the decision to do it. And it's been over 10 years. We've had 7 babies that we've fostered. And we're fortunate that a few of them we're still in touch with. And they're still a part of our lives, but that's not a guarantee. And it's not what you do it for any expectation. And I will say that it's absolutely the most incredible thing that I've ever done. And I think it's very meaningful for our kids, both with the wonder of what we've done in our community for these babies and their families potentially, but also the challenges and the introspection about what fostering really means, and to understand the patriarchal influences and what an intervention means. And we didn't go in blind. We went eyes wide open, but over a decade of learning and taking all the training to really understand how you play a role in your community. It's not just, it's so beautiful and magnificent, and we're just, you got to be really careful when you talk to people about the implications of fostering. There's a lot of communities that don't feel the same way about it. And so we always talk about it with that context, that it's a challenging part of our society. And overall, it's been something that has been really important to us to do with that context, with that lens, to make sure that we understand that.
And emotional as well, I could imagine.
Yeah. It's like you can't describe it. I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine is true, but every experience is completely unique. There's no boilerplate carbon copy experience. Every situation and environment is very unique, and there have been some really, really challenging circumstances.
I can imagine.
But we know that with learning and with growth for us, we've become better citizens in that capacity, as well as our global outlook on the world around us. And I think that has had the same impact on our kids, even though it's been tough on them at times too.
Amazing. Well,
I would say it
congratulations.
definitely has.
Yeah.
That's
Congratulations
amazing.
to you and your wife and your family. I think it's just one of the most incredible things I think anybody can do. So again, that's
Yeah.
Children's Aid Society. So if anybody wants to reach out or they're thinking about it, go and give a call and find
Yeah.
out.
And part of the call to action I'll leave you with on that before you shift is that, if you're thinking about it, don't think so much about me and what our family did. Think about the people that you might end up meeting who you eventually discover are part of the foster system in whatever capacity. And just know that they need support and they need understanding before they need anything in terms of judgment or any other perspectives that you might bring to the table. Right. That's what I can offer you.
Yeah. Great.
That's pretty amazing. I'm very impressed by that. I mean, that's extremely selfless, right? To put yourself out there like that. And yeah, if more people would do that, it would be fantastic, right? And getting the kids involved. How good is that, right? Lead by example. That's pretty amazing. So, wow. Well, our next question is just sort of about where did you grow up? Where you born and raised in Canada?
I was born in New York, actually, but I didn't live in New York. We were quickly back in Canada. My dad is a retired doctor, and so he was doing residency in many American cities.
So, do you have dual citizenship?
I do have dual citizenship, yes.
Wow.
And
but the U.S. version of cashcab.
No, but that's why I said at the beginning of this, like, Ben is the U.S. host, and that's why it was really important to me and amazing that they were packaging this as, no, we're not replacing anybody. This is just another version of cashcab that you get to enjoy. Yeah. And so, but I grew up in Vancouver. And so even though I've lived away from Vancouver for the majority of my life now, because I left right out of high school for university, we did go back to Vancouver for 1 year as a family in 2015. And it was always a finite year. And it was a real adventure for us to do that with intent, just to kind of say, hey, we can do this. And that also was a huge benefit to the kids growing up at very pivotal years. But it was an easy thing for me when I think about it. It's not like we picked up and moved to a foreign country. Like I said, it's not within my comfort zone. I was going home. We didn't live at home. We rented a place, but to do that whole thing. But anyway, Vancouver's my hometown. And so I just texted my son the other day when the Canucks were in Toronto playing the Maple Leafs. I was like, go Canucks. And because they're on this current season, they were on a bit of a win streak and the Leafs put that to an end. But it always is like,
didn't turn out well.
When I'm watching hockey with my kids and their, my son's girlfriend, I'm like, who are you? Why are you Toronto fans? I'm like, oh yeah, you grew up here. Oh, yeah, I can't expect you to like the Canucks, but just because I do, right? Anyway, so.
Well, I love Vancouver. What part of Vancouver did you grow up in?
Well, I had many homes in Vancouver because I'm from a divorced family, and both my parents had different houses. My dad remarried eventually, and so they still live in the Granville area, Granville and Broadway area. And so that was my last house when I was in high school. That was my last house. They're still there. My mom doesn't own a house there anymore. So I had a lot of different houses. Some of them rental. Eventually they purchased. With many regrets, they sold. This is like in hindsight, obviously, with spectacular views. But so I had a lot of different homes in Vancouver, mostly Vancouver proper. So, and I hold nothing against it because I have a lot of friends who I also grew up with in Vancouver who have stayed or have gone back who can't afford to live in Vancouver, so they're living in Langley and Burnaby or whatever. Like I remember in high school when people go, there's a party in Burnaby, or you want, I was like, I'm not going to Burnaby, or, and if for anybody that is like needs another reference, if you want to use a Toronto reference, it's like if you were living in Toronto and somebody said there's a party in Scarborough or Brampton, right? It's not that far, right? Not that far. You would go. In Vancouver, it was like, I would never, and we did, of course, but now to own a house in Burnaby would be like, that's Vancouver. When I meet people who live in Surrey and Delta and Langley and Chilliwack and Abbotsford and you talk to them, it's like, oh, I live in Vancouver. It's like, well, where? Well, not really Vancouver. I always lived in Vancouver proper.
I'm partial to Kitsilano.
Yeah, well, I went to school. And when we went back and lived for a year, we rented a house in Kitsilano, and my youngest went to my elementary school.
Oh, wow. That's neat.
Full circle.
And that was the wildest thing when I took her into the school at one. I knew exactly. I can't believe I remember, but I knew how to the back route to the gym and all that stuff. She was like, "How do you know?" And then my two teenagers at the time went to the first high school. I went to Kits High School, and then I transferred to Eric Amber and graduated from Eric Amber. But my two eldest went to Kits, and I love Kitsilano. Kitsilano is an amazing neighborhood. Yeah.
So here in Toronto, so what's your full address, mailing address, postal code?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
What was the first house or condo, apartment? What was the very first thing that you bought when you were here, and that was more of that stepping stone to where you are now?
The first house we bought was in Etobicoke in the West End of Toronto. So out Islington in the Bloor area.
Yep.
But it wasn't the first place that my wife and I lived, or when we were engaged. We did rent for a while on Bloor towards the West End. So we just tended to gravitate to the West End, even though my mom lived for many years on the Danforth. My sister lives and still lives more 401 Avenue area. So our family's got a triangle of the GTA mapped out. But I've always been a West Ender in terms of Toronto.
Gotcha.
And when I met my wife, she was renting an apartment in the West End. So we just kind of landed in the Bloor and Islington area with a bungalow, really sweet, really accessible, still scary when you buy your first house. And
absolutely.
I remembered my dad explaining to me how he felt when he and my mom bought their first house in Vancouver, and how he would have dreams of being like having a cinder block attached to his feet and just falling into the ocean, wondering how he's going to pay for it. And they probably paid like $12,000 for it or something ridiculous. Right. No, it was probably like 50 or 60,000. But anyway, like a bungalow is just a great place to start. Unfortunately, even those are really tough and inaccessible to young families to own in especially most major North American cities. But it was just a really sweet home with a little yard and, enough for us to put our hands on. And we had our first two kids there, and we were pregnant with our youngest when we moved and bought the new place. We're in the Junction now.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you had some great memories of that house, obviously.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, two of my strongest memories are, and I'm not a handy person, but I built with a buddy who knows what he's doing. I built a ground level deck in the back, and it was such a difficult job for me to get that started because I dug the holes with an auger myself.
Oh, wow.
And it was, if you've ever done any handy person stuff and you've used an auger to dig holes or dug any sort of fence post, it was just I almost left my family. I was going to walk away from the house, everybody. I had no idea.
I have dug hundreds of holes on my own. For those know that I owned a reno company for 20 years before becoming a real estate agent. So this is, decks were one of my favorite things to do, but it's 2-man augers, that's the best. And then as companies get larger and you get a little bit more working capital, you hire the post hole guys, and they just come in and they do it all. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I say I'm not, and I've done some stuff on our current project too, but our current home. But that was a strong memory for me because when we left, at least as far as I know, for many years, the people who bought it didn't tear that deck up. So it was plumb.
You must have done a good job.
Yeah. And then the other memory I have of leaving that house and what you said, Sheldon, about, or actually, Corey, you said memories. Our son, when we left that house, he was 6. And I was the last person in the house, that bungalow, just kind of wrapping things up. And I took him with us. And he cried in the front living space because he was going to miss that house, and he was just 6. Aww. Not in a temper tantrum type of way, but he was just like, it really resonated with him. And so, of course, I don't know how much he remembers now, but
at that very sweet. At that point in life, even at 6 years old, that's his entire life.
Yeah,
I mean, that's everything. We moved from Thornhill to Aurora 2 years ago, and my kids at the time were 7, 9, and 11. And or roughly about that, and it was amazingly emotional because all 3 of them were raised 100% in that home, And it was tough. It was pretty hard. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's an extremely emotional event, making any kind of move like that, especially when you have good memories, right? I always equate it to the last scene of Three's Company when Jack, Terry, and Janet walk out of the apartment. It always makes me cry. I'm sure you remember that show.
And even more poignant and recent, the Last Friends episode with Matthew Perry.
Yeah.
You know,
When they close that door for the last time.
Yeah. Like your living space, you're in the right business. I mean, you know, living space is, if not always, most often the most significant purchase that people make, and the most important purchase in terms of their lives.
Aside from really good bacon, houses would definitely be number two.
Yeah. You got to get the right bacon. 100%.
It has to be the right bacon. You know.
Well, you kind of answered question number 4 as well, which we were going to ask about renovation. So you did the deck. Was that about it that you put into that house?
That house, yes, we did. Yeah. We've done much more on our current house. Did you want me to talk about that, or do you still want to talk about the old house?
New house. Let's move on.
So the new house, the new house was a larger investment, a larger property, and we did some immediate renovations. Opened up the main floor, did full electrical. So we put probably about 50 or 60,000, maybe even more, $80,000 into the home right away when we got it.
Was this an older house?
Yeah, you know, at the time it was about 105 years old, so it's you know 100.
There's no new houses in the junction.
Yeah. So, you know, we just did our green energy audit to see what we could do to get rebates in terms of making our house more sustainable and more efficient. And a lot of them were like, you know, the biggest thing you should do is like tear it down and build walls that have, basically gut the place and put proper insulation on the outside walls. So yeah, it's a double brick kind of 2.5-story home, really beautiful. Not a lot of, fancy renovations were done at all when we bought it. And so we did a major overhaul to get rid of any lingering knob and tube. There was still some there from an electrical standpoint, opened up the main floor because we really like that open space, which we can get into.
Right.
And then eventually the other major renovations that I have, one of them I participated in was we didn't have a finished basement. Well, we finished the basement, put a second bathroom. I mean, with 3 kids, family of 5, we had 100%. Already lived for a while with one bathroom. There was no way we were going to do that for much longer with teenagers. So we started with wanting to put another bathroom in the basement. We just did a full reno in the basement. And I participated in that haplessly because I hired a guy that let you work on the project and bill a back against the project. So I did a lot of the grunt work on my own renovation. Wow. And so I did like stick framing and saw a lot of the stuff. And it really helps to make sure that, you see what's going on and you participate. Yep. So that was interesting. And my wife, Julie, was like, oh, well, now that you're handy, you're going to start fixing stuff around the house. I'm like, no, like I'm still not handy. And then after that, the last major renovations we did was the backyard. We put in some stone and a big back deck on the backyard. I didn't help with that, but that was a spectacular reno as part of the house.
Beautiful. Is that one of your favorite spaces now, the backyard?
Yeah. In terms of your questions, that back deck, I would have to say that's my favorite room in the house, even though I don't, on a per time basis, I don't spend a huge amount of time out there. But I'll be honest with you, like that was part of like my moment of deciding to foster. We had built that deck and I was on that back deck on a decent day for weather. And my wife and daughter had brought home the idea again of fostering, which had been brought up over many years. And I stood out there in that space and I go like, look at what I've got. Yeah. Of course I should be doing something like this. Like it just was like, give your head a shake, man, and stop over intellectualizing, so we just jumped in. And so that backspace was part of my kind of positive energy to do it. And we put an awning. And so like we bought a really good high-end awning that you crank out and it really becomes its own room, even in inclement weather, with a heat lamp, somewhat survivable, but
sure.
It's amazing to have that in the city, to have a space that you really like that outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's great. So famous question that we have, is your house haunted? Knowing that it's a century home, is there anything, usually when you take some stuff apart, some energies can sometimes get released. some people can start to hear some weird things. Is there any mysterious aspect of your house?
I believe that there is. I've always felt a little bit of something, and I wouldn't call it negative energy. I've always felt a little something. I mean, having an unfinished basement, you get to see a little bit of the guts. There's one experiential thing that kind of, there's a couple of experiential things that make me go, One of them was the couple that lived here for the longest. I think they were the second owners of the home, an elderly couple. They only had one son. When we bought, they were really sweet. And the son came back at one point in time, and he was probably in his 30s at the time. I don't remember for sure. He came back to pick up mail, and I hadn't met him. We had met the elderly couple a couple of times when we were doing the viewings. And we had by this time done the renos, and the space was open. I said, hey, did you want to poke your head in to kind of have a look? And he goes, no. And he went away right away.
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, that was weird.
I don't want them to know that I'm back.
Yeah, I do not want to enter that space. And I was like, okay, that was kind of a creepy no, as opposed to thanks for the offer. It was just kind of, so I've always
that's a nice offer, right?
Yeah. I was kind of like, maybe something was not quite, I don't know. And then it's this other thing, like, we don't have pets, which is a whole other story. But if you have a cat or a dog, you might be able to share this kind of sense. We've now had, our last child as a baby in this home, and then half dozen other babies, newborns in this home, a few of those babies into the toddler years, for sure in the years where we've had babies, when they can sit up and on our interact, like, the 4 to 6 to 8 month. And then we've had babies as old as 2 years old in our home. And those moments with a pet that they're like, and they're like completely looking at something else. And you're like, and I've had numerous of our babies, not in a scared way, even sometimes in a delighted way, completely distracted by something other than me. And I'm looking, is there a light flashing? And those moments to me, I was like, there's something here. And you know what? We've been here for over 20 years, and whatever it is, if there is something and I'm right, and the babies are right, it's harmonious. So no worries.
Fantastic. I think they love the fact that you are helping to raise children and you're fostering as well.
Maybe that's what's kept it harmonious.
Keeping that amazing.
Yeah, that's going to bring out the good spirits for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So,
we'll throw it to Corey for the last question. I'm going to fast forward to the end.
The last? Okay.
Yeah, we'll go. Oh, it doesn't have to be that one.
Okay. I was actually going to ask you, so, because obviously, you love where you live, and you have a lot of passion for your community and everything like that. The one question I was curious about is if you could wave the magic wand and just live wherever you wanted to in the world, of all the places you travel to, or let's say, where would you have a second home? Let's not displace you completely from the junction, but if you could have a second home somewhere else in the world, where would that be?
Yeah, I think I would go back somewhere on the West Coast.
Within Canada?
Within Canada. And part of my childhood did involve spending some time in the Gulf Islands with my mom, on the Sunshine Coast with my dad in separate situations. Not so much a ski bum up at Whistler, although I did spend time up there. There's something about the West Coast, and there's something I romanticize about not being entirely off the grid, but being more self-sufficient in a rural type of setting where I can grow stuff, have solar, maybe wind or thermal energy. My wife does call me Doomsday Prepper Light because I do prep. I'm a first aider as well. You missed that in my credits. I'm a Canadian Red Cross first aid instructor. There was
only so much I could put in.
I know, but you would have said boring. So I do think about emergency kits and being prepared and stuff like that, but I'm not like looking to be, off the grid and, but I think I romanticize being more self-sufficient and living in a more, although I find that peace in my own backyard in the middle of Toronto, if I could duplicate that in a place where I was also near the ocean and more of a wilderness setting, I would do that. So that's what I romanticize. But
You know where I think that would be.
PEI.
You got dual citizenship, Alaska.
Alaska.
Yeah. Alaska.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you open up the whole can of worms about the politics of different nations in terms of where you want to live and what I definitely am much more aware of American politics and being more immersed. And I know that there's a lot of Americans that feel the same way as many. And frankly, there's a lot of American politics that you might not like that's streaming into Canada and other countries. So I shouldn't be pointing my criticism lasers at America exclusively. Although I would admit, like, I've gone down for a lot of business in the States. I meet incredible people. I've got an amazing family down there. And we just went down to California for a family event. And I've spent a lot of time in California over the years for various reasons. And we went for a really amazing hike in the interior. And so there's just so much beauty in the world when you think about it. I should stop myself in being so judgy and snippy about one facet of American culture or Canadian culture that would prevent you from exploring that part of the world. Absolutely not. There's so much beauty and so many amazing places and people to go. So I take that back. It might be Alaska, but I would kind of go, maybe it would first be the Yukon before I go that far.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you're off the grid, you don't have to think about the politics, do you?
Yeah. Either way, you have to think about the bugs. So let's be real.
Right.
Yeah.
For those people from PEI, well-known mosquito haven here. So when the sun starts to set, you just don't go outside.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. Well, Sheldon has actually one last question for you. The bottom question, Sheldon.
We want to be your real estate agents.
So that's your question?
Not that you're moving. No.
Yeah, get in line.
Get in line.
Yeah, I was going to say, Actually,
no, this has been
a question. So you've been in your house for 20 years.
Yeah.
Are you still in touch with the real estate agent who sold it to you?
Well, we still get the classic reminder cards that they exist, and we still have a lot of trust in them.
There you go. That's awesome.
Wouldn't hesitate to potentially do business. I also have a really good friend who is also a real estate agent and never really hard sold me, but has always known, not on the first buy, but probably by the time we were buying again, just never really put himself, but he has made it clear that this is a place that he would like to help, and he's provided additional advice. Yeah. So for instance, it would be hard for me to, if I'm not going to go with the initial real estate agent, not go with him if he's available, and who wouldn't be available. When is a real estate agent? I've got too many properties right now. I mean, always I can't believe it.
Always available.
But awesome. There obviously with the two, there's the trust. But for instance, if there was some particular expertise, one of the things we're thinking about doing from a very fair and equitable standpoint is build a laneway house on our current property.
Yep.
And then not sell either one of them. But if we ever wanted to leave here, rent it out. And I know I don't know if this is part of your rental estate portfolio, but a lot of real estate agents are partnering with brokers to help manage properties now.
Property management,
Yes.
Well, because our suggestion really is, if you can hold on to it, absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you've got a place that's been paid off, or you got a lot of equity, and don't sell, right? If you can hold on, no question, as long as you can.
Yeah, but if you had particular expertise in a market that is not either one of our people, like PEI, like if we said we've dreamed, like if I said maybe the other coast and maybe our second home, we're not going to sell here, but how can you get us into that market? Absolutely. Knowing and getting to know the two of you, that's definitely something that we would look at.
I mean, you're too kind.
We too kind. I am a GTA guy. I just happen to have the house here, but pretty knowledgeable about it anyway.
But but you've bought, right? So you understand the market.
Yep. We bought it is an income property, and so we understand what it's like and how to work it. And it's not easy. It's also kind of difficult to be, when you're so far away and having to manage it. So having a community where you are, of people around, is a huge bonus. You can't suggest.
And that being said, when Sheldon was looking for his house, I did introduce him to an agent in PEI. Who took very good care of him. So there you go.
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's one thing I've noted about real estate. It's not an easy business, and it can be really obviously competitive and cutthroat, but there is seemingly a community of like-minded people. And when you find people that you like, even if obviously they're within your family, typically preferred, but I just don't find there's a lot of trash talk. You know what I mean? Like, I just haven't found that when it's competing.
We're kind of, we're all sort of on the same team, trying to help each other out for sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of industries are like that. I don't know if the game show industry is like that or not, but real estate,
yeah. I think the idea is that all real estate agents want an even playing field, like for everybody. There's a lot of battle between, this would be the best example before we wrap up, but there's a lot of battle between like the 1% people and the people that, do a fee for $3,500 plus, blah, 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 as opposed to the standard, which is, 2.5% to a buying agent, 2.5% to a selling agent. Everybody just wants a level playing field. And
the consumer just wants the best person for the job.
Yeah.
Simple.
And we want to be able to provide more and substantial service than you think you're going to be getting. That's the point, right? And that's actually what gravitated me towards changing that career from renovations into real estate, was because it had that same mindset. I always wanted to give people more than they thought that they were going to get for their money. And that's the same idea. And that's what we're trying to do. And so most real estate agents are the same way. We want, give us a chance to show you. Don't be afraid, right, of 2.5%, because you have no idea how much we're actually going to benefit you in that case. So it's a great thing. But listen, in the end, this was awesome. It was amazing to get to know you. You did awesome on the trivia. Don't worry about the first two questions. You did fine. Those were hard questions. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. And Cashcab, new episodes airing January on Game TV Access in the States. You can find Adam Growe everywhere where he is. And again, I'm gonna do the shout out to Children's Aid Society again. So if anybody wants any more information on that, please contact. And because what he and his wife do and his family is just amazing. And
Adam, do you want to throw out any of your social links, Instagram or anything like that?
Well, it's easy to find me if you look up. I'm typically only on Instagram, LinkedIn, and a little bit of Facebook. And I've started to build a community for the Cashcab brand on TikTok. And a lot of people have differing opinions about TikTok. I've just found it to be I know that you can find toxicity on any social media platform, and it's a really big problem. I spend most of my time on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok because TikTok to me is just hilarious. It's absolutely bonkers creativity. If there's worries about, spying and whatever, I get it. But that if you look for me on Instagram, you might find occasional pictures and commentary. If you look for me on LinkedIn, it's all Adam Growe with an E on the end of Growe. It's much more professional, really about events and shows. And TikTok, if you're looking on TikTok for moving stories about fostering, you're not going to find them on TikTok. I'm really just being silly. You can, I think you can find a little bit of the different brand of Adam Growe in all of those platforms.
There you go. I love it.
Thank you again.
Well, thank you again so much.
Yeah. So awesome. Real Estate Rocks. Again, catch us everywhere on all streaming. Thank you very much again to Adam Growe. And to next time, you guys rock. Thanks so much.
You too rock.
Thanks so much, Adam. Much appreciated. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, gents.
All the best.
Take care.